me is probably the best one, alongside Medellin recently, that has happened since I've been in the art scene. So back then, I do remember that we were bringing a lot of curators to visit, and Cali would be certainly one of those very important stops. And Victoria Noorthoorn was co-curating this Salón Nacional de Artistas, which occurred in Cali in 2008. So I would say that is the origin of my entrance to the two of you. I am thankful for that. And I am very much looking forward to what comes in these next 45 minutes. But I do want to probably mention a few of those meeting points where the two of you have come about. And starting in Cali, then I would go to possibly La Bienal de Lyon, where Victoria Noorthoorn was curator, and we will be, I believe, seeing some of the images of Bernardo's participation. But not only Bernardo and Victoria have collaborated as artists and curators, but Bernardo has also been working from different views of his career, and I think that's what makes his work all the most interesting, where he writes impeccably, designs, and there are a lot of disciplines where they have collaborated. So once again, thank you, and I am invited so that the OVR, the online viewing groups which will be up until tomorrow. So Bernardo, Victoria, I leave it to you. I know we will have some interesting viewers online, so I would want to motivate for all of those of you who might have questions to please do so and use the chat, and I will be monitoring and probably pitching in if I see that we have a question from our audience. So I leave it to you. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Bernardo.
Thank you, Catalina.
Well, I'd like to thank Catalina and Victoria, who graciously accepted the invitation to talk with me. She is now the curator of the Museum of Modern Art in Buenos Aires.
The director.
I'm sorry, the director. I'm very, very sorry. The director of the Museum of Modern Art in Buenos Aires, which is something I should know, and it's absolutely my fault. Not saying the right word. We have been in a continuous conversation for the past 20 years, and we initially thought that we were going to talk in Spanish, and we discussed this issue of talking in Spanish or English, and just at the last moment, English became the language that we're going to use. So, but it's a fortunate thing, because one of the issues that we've been talking about for the last 20 years has been this issue of translation and the prevalence of English as the lingua franca of art, and something that we try to resist a little bit, although we participate, of course, of the language. But I think other languages should be spoken around art. But this is a tangent we will not get into. I think we should jump into the work, and just to say thank you again to Victoria for accepting the invitation and be here with us today.
I'm very happy to participate, and I think the audience must be very willing to start, for us to start. So Bernardo and Catalina, thank you very much for the invitation. It is an honor for me to participate in this talk. Bernardo and myself, we converse, as Bernardo said, for a very, very long time. And in my view, Bernardo is a holistic artist, an intellectual. I was telling Bernardo yesterday, we were sort of doing a catching up, preparing for this talk. And I was reminding him how important his meeting him and encountering him in life and sharing important moments has been for my professional practice as a curator. And I have to say that when I worked as a curator, co-curator together with Bernardo at the 41st Salón Nacional de Artistas in Cali, in Colombia, there were 4 Colombian artists and myself as curators of that enormous Colombian event, which was a fantastic experience. And working with the 4 artists, Jose Antonio Martinez,
Jose Horacio.
Díaz, and Oscar Munoz as well, as curators. The 4 artists, and especially Bernardo, and later when I worked with Bernardo and Eric Beltran, they managed to convert my brain in another brain. I had to shift 180 degrees my curatorial practice in view of our conversations, because they taught me how to approach the work of art, not, let's say, as an object or as an asset that one has to analyze externally, but in a certain way to get how I could get myself inside the process of that and mysterious entity which is the work of art, and how could one start to understand that that work of art was much more complex and flexible and could be approached in many ways and could actually disappear in your own hands. So that mystery of the art object is a mystery that I think I learned a lot through Bernardo, and I think it is a wonderful opportunity for all the audience to listen to one of the most refined artists in the world, I believe. I really want to listen to how Bernardo started. Bernardo, you always, or generally, you tell the story of the lost drawings, the drawings that somehow got lost when somebody stole a bag with drawings, and what happened. That's the beginning of a long story, isn't it?
Yes, it's a sort of an origin story, and the way it happened, it was I was supposed to show my drawings to a curator in Bogota. It was I believe 1993, and they were mostly figurative drawings that I was an art student at the time, and I was going to meet him at the Universidad Nacional. And my bag got stolen. Of course, it didn't get stolen because of the drawings. It was stolen because it was simply a bag. And that type of loss in 1993 is catastrophic because we didn't have digital photography, and photography was a very expensive thing. So there were no images of the drawings, or at least very few images that I had made before. So it was a complete loss. It's something that wasn't there anymore. And that was a sort of a revelation, this sense that they were lost forever. So what I decided to do at the time was to make written descriptions of the drawings. And I guess, I mean, I have to elaborate after the fact on the why it was a written description and not an attempt to make the drawings again. And I'm not sure why I decided that I should go with a written description. Probably because I thought it was the more the most immediate way of doing it, which sounds absurd if you think back on it, because why would you write about something that you should be seeing? But anyway, that's what I did, and they were very detailed descriptions, and they dealt mostly with the surface of the drawing, which was something that I sort of paid attention to while I was doing them, but was not my primary focus because they were figurative drawings. And then I thought that while I was writing those descriptions, I thought that I would use those descriptions to make the drawings again, sort of a redrawing of those drawings. And my intent was to make them just as they were. It's a sort of a kind of like a magician that has a trick up its his or her sleeve, and kind of if you took my drawing, I can make another one. It doesn't matter. So I thought I was going to do the same exact drawings, but then when I started reading the descriptions, and they were so minute and so taken by the surface of the drawing, I started to do abstract drawings, and that was a huge change in my work. Not only because I switched from this figurative drawing to abstract drawing, in that sense, that's like a 20th century story, but also because there was this issue of distance and of all the delays and the whole issue of time getting in the way of getting to the thing. And my whole work becomes something that is just something that cannot reach what you want to see or what you want to get to. And I think that was like the biggest thing that happened when I did these drawings. And
perhaps you want to show some of the drawings you did in '95 that are that we have prepared for the presentation, and also perhaps you could show us, there are some of the drawings where you are sort of registering the passing of time in that factory, or perhaps you can go in.
Yes. So these drawings that we are seeing now are a few of them, because I didn't lose that many drawings, but then when I started to repeat the drawings, it became sort of an obsession. And so one of the descriptions could generate 3, 4, 5, 6 different drawings. And I can't go into each one in detail, because it's more of the feeling that these descriptions engendered in the moment I was trying to repeat them. And what is funny is that I lost the written description, so now it's like another layer of that. But then a few of the gestures that began to appear in these drawings are gestures that I still repeat up until today. A few years later,
there is something very interesting in this process, which is the relationship between text and image, which is a relationship that you are working continuously in your practice, and where that shift from going from the image to the text, and then from the text to the image again, there is a shift in, let's say, in the situation of what is it that exists, or what is it that we are talking about, or what is it that this image is? Is it an image that is an entity in itself, or is it dependent on that text? And to what extent that image puts in tension the relationship between word and image, and the gap also. You speak generally of that, the importance of this gap, this hiatus, that gives a lot of sense to the creation of your of your work. Perhaps you want to refer to that gap, Bernardo?
Yes, the way I've elaborated this thing about this distance between word and image and surface is with this notion of page. I think for someone that started working in the late 20th century, there is no pure format. There is the only format that you have, or the only medium that you have, is this page, the place where reproductions exist. The descriptions for those drawings were kind of a matrix to create a reproduction of something that was already lost. And the only place that where this can take place, I'm sorry for the redundancy, is on a page. So I think the drawings are not quite drawn on a piece of paper as much as they are drawn on a page. And in that sense, it's a place where writing, which can be printed or handwritten, or in many other ways introduced, is always having a relationship with image, and it's always having a relationship with the surface of where these things collide. So I try to have all the work, I try to have the work deal with these three things at the same time. And in that sense, I try to maintain this distance between these things. For example, if we go to the drawing that says un perro, a dog, they have that drawing. If we could go to that in the presentation, I'm sorry. That one. If you could zoom into that drawing, you see that there is a kind of a indentation that was, because it was made with the printing plate. And so it leaves a kind of a margin, very subtle. To me, that type of devices are the most important, because they create this distance, and they transform the paper into a reproduction of something that is not there. That what used to be the drawing of a dog that I saw on the street, but now it becomes any dog that you can see on the street. Also, there was like this idea of writing very consciously, and I had to write as in a mirror, because it was I used a printing plate to do that. So there is this thing with writing, but it's writing as a kind of a manual activity, not writing as a literary activity or a symbolic activity, but something that you do with your hands just as much as you do as you draw.
It's writing as drawing, no? It's where they both merge, where there's no distinction, and in that not distinction, there is sort of this distance that appears in relation to the image, an image that is no longer a representation as such, or an expression as such, but it is moving in between, no? And the fact that memory or oblivion are also very much a part of your work constantly. You know, you're working with memory, but you're also forgetting as you try to recuperate that memory, and that procedure happens a lot in your work, in different works. I can think of, for example, in the installation, the wonderful show you did at the Museo de Arte Moderno in Buenos Aires in 2016. We have the work with the colored glasses. Perhaps you can delve onto those.
Well, that's those drawings, or I consider them drawings, or it could be paintings in a way. but those are made through walks in cities. There are various series of these colors. There are things that I see one color next to the other, and I find it fascinating that they get together by chance. So I try to make a record of these colors in my notebooks. But I don't take a picture of. I have a very troublesome relationship with photography. I don't take pictures normally. If you see my phone, it has very few pictures. Mostly pictures I have to take because someone asks me to send kind of what I'm doing now for work. But I'm not the kind of person that is taking pictures of in daily life just because. So what I do is these kind of descriptions of what I see. And in the case of these specific drawings, these specific colors that we had in Buenos Aires, it's a fragment of a much larger piece that I haven't quite finished because these are the colors that of the bombs that happened throughout the 90s in Colombia, the colors of the cars that had these bombs. And so I have an archive of all the news that has like the model and the color of the car, and there are more or less 53 of these colors, and I try to remember what that car and that make and that model of the car, the kind of color that it had, but I do it from memory. And normally, because they are made in very thin sheets of glass, they have to be destroyed at the end of an exhibition because they're very difficult to transport. But I do it with a rubber roller and oil painting, and I do it by hand. I paint it on the back of the glass, and it's the exercise of trying to match this color in memory. So each time I repeat it, the color is slightly different. And but it's not limited to these car bombs. I have also combinations of colors on buildings, and it's something that I'm always registering while I'm walking through the city or wherever I am. So yes, memory becomes very, very important. There was a question now, I briefly saw it, that somebody talked about the work being metaphysical. And I have trouble with that word, because although the work can be lost, the glass can be shattered, and the drawings can be lost forever or destroyed, or somebody buys them and I will never see them again. In that sense, I'm not attached to the work. I don't have to have it myself. But I wouldn't deny that I have a very intense relationship with the materiality of the work. Even if I know that the pieces of glass will be destroyed at the end of the exhibition, I have an attachment to that surface while I'm drawing it, because I try to be doing it with the most intense concentration that I can provide to the drawing at that moment. And I don't care if it lasts for just 5 minutes or 1 month or whatever. So the materiality of the work is really important. Even if it's work about its immateriality. I think I move in that contradiction. I'm sorry.
yesterday when we spoke, and you have used this expression time to time, where I'm not sure exactly how you would translate this to English, but you mentioned that you are interested in preserving the teeth of showing that your work shows its teeth, let's say, no, that it maintains its criticality, and that criticality comes from that attention to the surface and that obsession to responding to that to that materiality that you encounter or that you have or that you create, no. And I found yesterday, reviewing a very beautiful presentation that Bernardo did for the Biennale de Lyon in 2011, where he created an incredible facade for one of the main venues, La Sucrière in Lyon, based on the story The Hunger Artist by Kafka. But then that story he translated in a grid. I don't know if you can see in my screen, but here in the middle of the book, and I found this, it says trois dents. I don't know if you see it. So 3 teeth. So I was wondering, Bernardo, if you could perhaps go from this attention to that you were speaking right now, this attention to the drawing and how you respond to it, and how it doesn't matter how much time it takes or what it takes to do what you have to do, to this fact, to this enormous belief that you have that each one of these drawings can bite, no? Or that your work can bite, and how does it bite? I'm intrigued, and I'm sure that the audience must be intrigued as well.
Well, I think in reference to that specific piece for the facade in Lyon, I think it was more of me appropriating the work by Kafka, The Hunger Artist. And I think it's a very beautiful metaphor, because we have this person that is a hunger artist who starves for his art is starving, the act of starving, and this person will be carried with a circus, and there will be somebody counting the days that they would be starving. And this one in particular, this character in Kafka's story was the best starving artist that was ever there. And he lasted many days without eating, and everybody was amazed with his capacity to starve. And when he was about to die from his starvation, die for his art in a way, he started to ask for forgiveness, because he wasn't really an artist. And everybody said, "But why are you asking for forgiveness if you are the best starving artist that has ever existed? You lasted for lots and lots of days, more than anybody else." And he says, "Well, the thing is that I have lasted all these days because I've never, ever felt any appetite. I don't like food. So I would be a better artist if I'd liked food and I resisted the act of eating. But the fact that I didn't find food that was appetizing enough makes my art phony." And I think that this is a wonderful metaphor, because it makes the choices that art makes much more complex. I think we're living in a time where this idea that the arts have to be edifying always is very complicated, and I think every artist has this ambiguous relationship with it, with his or her work, in the sense that it's not quite clear why the decisions are made. You have to create a whole story around that, and it's and for example, this idea of the lost drawings would not happen, wouldn't have happened if the bag wasn't stolen. There is this reality interrupts also life in a way. What you set out to do, there's something that happens, and then something happens. I don't know if I'm expressing myself
also
correctly, but
you put yourself in a position of accompanying life with your art daily in a very, very obsessive manner. So perhaps we can look at some of the drawings in which Bernardo, every day he produces drawings every single day of his life, and he records them, and he records what he does through his drawings, his activities, the amount of time spent, and with all kinds of systems that appear in those beautiful drawings as well that we have.
We can go to the, yes.
Just a little bit.
Just after studying art, I had to work in a cardboard box factory. I was a graphic designer for that factory. And I used to have like a sheet of paper beside my desk, and I was always doing these things in which I didn't have to think, but just to repeat a pattern. And it was just a way to not to keep on being an artist in a way, because it precarious moment in life, and it was probably a moment where I could stop being an artist at any time. So I made myself always do something just to have a.
You were, let's say, recording the passing of time, right? And sometimes you seem to expand the notion of time, because I just saw that Sarah was showing the Bitcoin project too. In, like, for instance, in this drawing, you see all the small circles, and that is Bernardo's activity during that specific moment in time. But then when you created that enormous project, which is to render visible a Bitcoin operation through painstakingly making all the calculations that can take you to that result, which were, I don't remember if it was 25 meters of calculations in the most minute calligraphy. Perhaps, and in that sense, you take something that is so fast, that is moving so fast in real time, and suddenly you open a door so that time becomes an enormous experience that can take actually months, perhaps.
Yes, and that is something that we discussed a lot when we were working in these curatorial projects. This idea that if you apply like a kind of an obsolete technology to something, that the obsolete technology acquires a kind of a critical value, in the sense that if you transcribe a computer operation, which is absurd and it has no practical purpose, the act of doing this transcription will give the computer calculation a sense of its dimension in terms that a person can understand these dimensions. For that piece in particular, it's not the one that we're seeing right now. It's the one that has little papers sticking out. Sarah, if you could please. It's that one, yes.
And,
So
and just the previous, so that the audience gets to see the dimension, the previous slide, Sarah. That one, here you're seeing 2/3 or half of the work here. So just to give you a sense that where all these A4 drawings with all these calculations, and when you zoomed in, you actually see, now yes, let's see the detail, Sarah. There.
So I researched with a mathematician friend how to do this calculation, which is basically an encryption algorithm, which is mathematically not very complex, but it's very tedious because you have to convert numbers and scramble them in a very definite way for many times over. And I did this for like 2 months, and I was doing this by hand just to see how one cycle, the computer would make 1 million cycles or more than millions of cycles of these calculations on a number. And I just did one of those cycles, and it's the 25 meters. So what I was interested is in the way that drawing and the tools of drawing could make something that presents itself as something that it's very transparent. And I despise the way that our digital life presents itself as like the most transparent thing that there is, because this idea of transparency is just a decoy that hides the fact that it's very opaque. And I like that drawing is a very opaque procedure that reveals the opacity of these kind of transactions. And it's something that I think that drawing has the capacity to be deployed also as a tool. I normally use drawing as an end in itself, but I think that drawing has also this wonderful quality of being a technology, a very basic technology, but that can be applied to lots of things in life and really discover relationships that you could not do through writing, for example, that you can only discover when you set the idea of drawing into reality.
Ahí está Luis Enrique, lo veo. No sé si está por ahí, pero saludarlo. Somos grandes fans de Luis Enrique Pérez Oramas. I have to say that in Spanish, I'm sorry.
Sí, Victoria. Luis has
No sé si
been...
me escuchó, pero...
Luis has been following your conversation because I know he is also a big fan of Bernardo Ortiz's work, and we should probably point out one of Bernardo's participation in the Bienal de Sao Paulo, where he showed also one of the pieces that was featured at the Museum of Modern Art, the recording that is based on a specific gravure from the collection of the Museum of Modern Art. So perhaps this would be a nice opportunity to talk about this work if Victoria and Bernardo are here.
Yes, this work has actually a lot to do with the lost drawings, because if we could go to the next slide. There is this engraving that was made by Ensor at the end of the 19th century, and it's called A Starry Night in the Cemetery, but you cannot, it's almost abstract. Actually, what happened to me when I first saw it is that I didn't see the image. I couldn't see the image, and then when I read the title, I saw the crosses and then understood the stars, and like the whole image pulled through because I could read it. And what I did was I superimposed this white grid on the engraving, and then tried to make the most minute and obsessive description of each and every one of those squares, which is 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter, and then made a recording. Of course, I had the text translated into Portuguese, and made a recording and a vinyl disc with these descriptions. And it's it's a piece that I like a lot, because it condenses all these relationships that I have with photography, with reproduction, with translation, with language, with image. And if we could play for just like 2 minutes of the recording, we can see like how tedious it is.
Meu exercício já é hora de aceitá-lo. Tem um destino inexorável, o tédio. Trata-se de descrever uma superfície, do que tem lugar nela. Neste caso, uma gravura de Ensor, que tem como título Estrelas no Cemitério. Pensei que percorrer sistematicamente cada um dos seus 252 centímetros quadrados me levaria a descobrir inusitadas formas de falar de uma superfície cinza. E, no entanto, as mesmas palavras se aglomeram sempre produzindo uma bruma que esconde a superfície. Assim como os silêncios desta gravação escondem o que penso enquanto falo. Sobre uma fotografia da gravura, tracei uma retícula de 1 centímetro. Numerei cada fila e cada coluna e descrevi cada centímetro quadrado. A1. Vultos cinzas. Um ponto negro na metade inferior direita. A2. Um fundo cinza. Um fundo cinza entre aspas. Não é fundo. A superfície é cinza. Graus de cinza.
Well, and we can stop now, because it will go on and on and on and on for like 1 hour, and the narrator will be describing the whole surface very minutely. But at the same time, the act of describing and talking about this image that you cannot actually see makes you go in lots of different directions, and that was part of the work also. So again, with that question about the metaphysicality of the work, it's kind of there, but at the same time, I find that to me, the physicality is also very important. It's as if,
yes, you know, Bernardo, there is sorry to interrupt, there is a question that has to do exactly with that from Carmen Cortés Martin. Hola, Bernardo, you mentioned the importance of physicality in your work. It will be great to hear your thoughts on the challenges or opportunities you may have encountered with virtual versus physical exhibitions. And I think that ties into something that we were talking about yesterday that has to do with the importance of being present, no? And what does the gaze or the look or the sight of something that implies this corporeality, no? This being in a corpse, in a body, and that body present, be it through because we activate our sight or because we activate our diverse senses. So what is the importance of physicality of the body? How is it possible to live or to approach these new virtual ways and scenarios for us in the arts? It's a very challenging question for everyone, artists, curators.
Yes, I think we are confronted with this question now more than a few years ago, but I think it's something that we have been postponing for a long time. I think ever since there was a reproduction of a work of art on a piece of paper. And that could go back to the 17th century, I think, at least in Western art. And because you see, the question of presence, it's always treated as if you are present with the work, there is no distance between you and the work. But I think it's quite the opposite, actually. Once you are present with the work, there is the possibility of distance. And I think that is a wonderful thing. It's something that shapes the way that we see. The act of seeing is it's not homogeneous, it's heterogeneous, in the sense that seeing is always mediated by, not just by your eyes, but by the body and the fact that you can walk up to the image and you can walk out of the image, and you can see the image in relationship with its surroundings, and you can see the surroundings in relationship with the image. And there is a whole choreography of seeing that we haven't quite understood as very important to somehow translate into the digital realm. I would not go as far as saying that it's untranslatable, because I think that kind of sayings are very nostalgic. I think it could be translatable, just as many things are translatable, but it should be translatable in ways that are not obvious and that are more complex. A few years ago,
so let's say, obsolete digital work for the museum just 2 months ago, let's say.
Yes. We did a video for this exhibition on silence that you had at the museum, and it was an 8-bit cloud that was moving very slowly in a digital sky. And but I was going to say that a few years ago I had to write a text about this notion of distance, and I thought that, for example, the time when we had black and white photography, reproduction of black and white photography, black and white reproductions of art, that was very useful, because when you were seeing black and white reproductions of art, you could sense that there was a distance between what you were seeing, as a reproduction and the work that was reproduced. And then when black and white reproductions were very efficiently phased out from art publications, then there is this illusion that there is no more distance. And that, to me, is it's the great difficulty that the digital tries to make, that there is no more distance. I think if we could think of ways of using digital reproduction to exacerbate the notion that there is a huge distance from what you see, I think then we can have a poetic intervention in these media, and it would be very productive, I think.
I think this takes us directly to the way in which you conceived, together with Eric Beltran, you conceived a way to, for example, reproduce the Scream by Munch. I'm going to show the audience. I'm going to try to, let's see. Here, let's see if you can recognize Munch's Scream there. Do you want to explain that, Bernardo?
That was something that happened when we were doing the work for the Mercosur Biennial. And the trouble was that we had asked artists to send us images that were very important for their work, images made by other people. And we had a very big collection of these images, and we were planning to do a whole section of the catalog with the reproductions of the images that the artists wanted to have. But there was a huge budget cut because this was in 2008 when there was this world economic crisis. And there was no budget for us to secure the rights of all these images. And this thing changed like the whole concept of what we were trying to do with this catalog with Eric. Sorry. And so what we did was take a look at the Brazilian law, copyright law. And there was this article that established that to reproduce something fairly and without paying rights, you could reproduce up to 15% of the work. So what we did was have these pictures blown up very big, and then try to find the most interesting or intriguing 15% of that image. So we have reproductions of all these images, but they are just like a very small part of the image. Just 15% of the whole surface of the image is reproduced. And this gave us like kind of a micro photography of these images, and then the juxtaposition of these almost abstract images with the titles. If you could zoom into these images, Sarah, any which one? I think we have there of the yellow ones. If you could zoom in. Well, I don't know. There was I chose Sildo Meireles' images to show them to you to everybody, because it was very interesting to see. For example, he had this image of the famous photography of this girl in Vietnam that was running from the napalm bombardment, and it becomes abstract just because of only the 15%. But then when you read the title of the image and you see this abstraction, the whole image comes together again, because you see it in your mind. It's a kind of a thing that memory does, because those are images that everybody has seen before. So that was a way in which we could use, again, these drawing procedures to work around like a very real budgetary problem and try to convert it into something that is poetic and also very potent, also political statement for the catalog, but also from the people that were doing this catalog, that were the curators and the artists, to the institution that was commissioning the whole thing. And it's a way of working around these problems that I think it's very important. So to go back to the question, I think if you take if you analyze like the ways that reproduction works and the ways that the image or images are constructed, or the medium is constructed, then you can find ways to rearrange them. And I think that was one of the most important lessons of the 20th century. And we should not write off those lessons because they are ever more important today.
Then there is another question, which is, in your work, there is by Juanita Madrinan, in your work, there is a blurred line between drawing and painting. For you, what defines that line? I think it's a beautiful question that takes us hopefully back to the first drawings that we were seeing today and that are the core of of this meeting. So perhaps we can go back to drawing and painting and the diverse distances and proposals that they bring.
Well, I have a very difficult relationship and conflicted relationship with painting. I cannot and will not consider myself a painter, though I may use the materials and that the painters could use. I think because of this idea of reproduction of the page, of all that we've been talking about, I think that these are drawings about painting in a way. I wanted to be a painter, but then I lost all the drawings for the painting. So I now try to just work in this very blurred line, as Juanita said, between those two things. And to me, that's a very interesting place, because you can go from one thing to the other. I think that probably for me, but this is I will not state this as a very objective thing. For me, painting has kind of a weight and a solidity that I cannot stand that much. I mean, I'm in awe of painting, but I always have this trouble with this solidity of painting. That's why I always try to use like the most thin and light paper to do my work, because I think that in a way I'm inviting I'm inviting the work to be lost and to be not that permanent because of the materials I choose. And painting on the other hand has this kind of solidity and permanence that is very difficult for me.
You once, perhaps we can go rounding the conversation up, and I was reviewing a conversation that you had with Carlos Hufman here in Buenos Aires for the book that we will publish at the museum at some point, and you quoted Agnes Martin in her reference to when she says that the idea of the work is about perfection, but that she thought her paintings were very, very far away from being perfect. And you would add to her quote, let's say, how you were interested in maintaining that gap, that abysm, you said in Spanish, between those two things, no? And so I think there is this willingness that your drawings have of being a lot of things, because each one of the drawings, they trigger lots of texts and actions and other drawings, and again there is this reverse methodology that you have all the time, where the drawings trigger situations and situations trigger your drawings, and perhaps painting is a tool in that universe, no? So
yes, I think that's a perfect way to, I think that you said it perfectly. I could only add that I think that it's not just I think all drawing, even the drawing that somebody does to give you directions to get to their house, has this quality of being something other than the piece of paper that contains it. I think it's implicit in drawing as such, this idea of projection, of something that it's not completely there. And probably that's the reason why I always return to drawing. And even if I'm not technically doing a drawing, I think there is a drawing procedure in the work always. And that's why I define myself as someone who draws a draftsman. I don't think of myself as a painter in that sense.
Victoria, and if I may, I would want to pitch in a painting that comes to mind that we showed at Arco just last February. And as we were showing this painting, and I was asking Bernardo where this figure, it was an abstract, very subtle form made out of pencil, and I asked him where the form, what the origin of the form was, and he actually made a reference to Agnes Martin. And he said, actually, I was trying to, correct me if I'm wrong, Bernardo, but he said, actually, I'm trying to copy an Agnes Martin. I admire so much her work. And there's this certain presence of failure constantly in Bernardo's work. And so he says, I was actually trying to copy Agnes Martin, but I'm such a failure that this is what I ended up achieving. So I think that's very interesting that you pointed out his quote and this reference to failure that is constant appearing in his work, which I consider it makes it all the more magnificent. And this is the image, if we are correct.
Right, yes. Because if I had done my work correctly, this one would be like a very uniform pattern, a field of very uniform pattern. But since I'm very short-sighted, and this is a very big format, I have to work at like 15 centimeters from the surface of the drawing, and things get really messy and distorted, and these drawings grow like that, like full of errors. It's just like a surface that invites error.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think perhaps we can round it up. I have an opening that is waiting for me. For 7 months, we are coming out of the lockdown, and I think I have the press in the gallery space.
No, you have to go, Victoria. Thank you. You've been very generous.
But I'm honored, and always it's a joy to converse with Bernardo, and I'm very grateful for Catalina and Casas Rigner for the invitation. And I would continue the whole day.
What show are you opening, Victoria?
We're opening an exhibition of Nicanor Arauz, a great Argentine artist who's around 38, 40 years old, incredible sculptor. So I invite everybody to peep in Museo Moderno. It's www.museomoderno.org. And we're very, very proud. He's a fantastic artist that I invited to present his work at the same time that a retrospective of Alberto Greco, who's a very key figure of the 60s in Argentina. And I thought that Nicanor was the Argentine artist that could, let's say, hold that position against this kind of big fire of contemporary art in Argentina. So he created an incredible show. The retrospective of Greco was moved to next year, but still they will be able to coincide 2 or 3 months at some point. So we'll see. So I invite everybody. Thank you
I will definitely check it out, Victoria, because I have to say I am a huge fan of your work. I always love the way you create those dialogues, and actually come to mind when you showed when you had the show by Bernardo and there was the Vigo show happening at the same time. These kind of encounters that you make are quite amazing. And I would point out lastly the beautiful show that you put together at the MMK in Frankfurt a couple of years ago, A Tale of Two Cities. We collaborated in that show, and it felt quite nice to be part of it with the artists that we work with at Casas Rigner. And that was once again one of the collaborations where you two had one of your ongoing conversations. So I am sure this is only one more of zillions that we need to have in the future.
Thank you, Catalina. I'm very generous.
Thank you. Gracias, Bernardo.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Gracias, Victoria. Como siempre, muy agradecido.
Yes, Sara, I think Sara did an amazing job. It just makes me have so many more Zooms. Thank you, Sara.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you.
Sara.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye. Ciao.